Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Business Insights room. Every Thursday, Tim Sullivan and I, Maya Matsuoka, lead a discussion looking for insights, developments, and new opportunities for the business in Japan. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions, and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region.
Good morning to all of you who joined us here this beautiful Thursday morning. It looks like we are heading back into spring, although you never know. I mean, it could get cold again in a couple of days. But today we've got Tim Sullivan here and me, and Timothy Langley kindly joined us on stage. Woohoo! Yes. So as you have seen from the title of the room, we are going to talk about life lessons in Japan, which you cannot find in a textbook. And because we believe that it's not only us who have lived here in Japan for a while, probably there are people who will want to come to Japan too in the room, please do join us on stage and let's talk about this. If you have any observations of your own or comments or even questions, come up and talk with us. We will be very happy to share most of the things we know here with you. And of course, if you have time to go to the links, which I'm going to pin in the upper part of your screen, please do try to go there and see what is on the other side of the line. So I promise you that it is interesting and you're going to learn quite a few things. So now I have pinned, this is Tim's, I'm going to pin the link to his profile and also a couple of links to one of his articles and then another link to the Unplanned Japan podcast. So I do encourage you to tap on them and have a look at what is beyond the links. Well, Tim, so because you're our special guest today, I think that we can start with you. Just yesterday, was it? You published another article on Medium, and it really lands very well into the topic of this room. So you wrote about Kikubari in Japan and how Kikubari can help your business and can help you succeed with your customers. So could you please tell us a little bit about the article? And I'm going to get the link and share it with everybody here.
Oh, well, thank you very much for the plugs. And I actually wrote that article a long time ago. And at the time I was living in Hawaii, and there were a lot of businesses, and there still are. They wanted to serve the Japanese market. And there were a lot of weaknesses, but there was also a lot of potential, especially if Hawaii has a really strong hospitality culture, and that's kind of what the Japanese crave, that authenticity. So it was just a matter of educating them on what the Japanese expectations were, and then rather than telling them what to do, you work together and say, okay, based on this knowledge, what do you guys think you should do to, stay authentic, but still adjust your service so the Japanese are going to love it? And people get really excited when they're presented with that challenge rather than being told what to do. And they come up with the best ideas. They just come up with fantastic ideas, right? So I was trying to promote that service in Hawaii when I wrote this. So getting back to Kikubari, what would you say the direct translation is? The distribution of your spirit? I don't know. Maybe you can come up with a better one. But it's I didn't know there was a word for it, but I was observing it without really, it was almost unconscious. So we all know the beer pouring ritual, right? And so you sit down and nobody has their own glass and there's big bottles you share and you're always pouring for other people and you're not allowed to pour for yourself. And you see how good the Japanese are at that ritual, at anticipating each other's needs. And if the glass is half full, you fill it up. And then, when you unpeel that, you're thinking, okay, in order to be able to do that, first you have to keep an eye on everyone around you. And really not worry about yourself. Don't worry. Somebody will be worrying about you, but you have to be observant. And then you have to be proactive. I mean, being observant allows you to be proactive, right? And I never thought of that concept before, believe it or not, even though proactive behavior. And there's a lot of people in my culture who are really good at it. And there's a lot of people who are terrible at it, But in Japan, it just seems to be baked into the culture. And the other point I make, and I probably should have emphasized it more in the article, is that Kikubari is a way of thinking, and it's not something you turn off and on. And it's not just something you provide a customer. It's something, ideally, you want the people on your team practicing with each other, anticipating each other's needs, doing kind things for each other, helping each other out. And in doing so, you build these relationships. And the beauty of it is it requires no linguistic expertise. It transcends the language barrier. Kindness is kindness, And even if you don't hit the mark, if the intentions are seen as good, you even get brownie points for that, So that's on the Kikubari topic. So I recently wrote that article. I kind of, I modified it a little bit. And it talks about, basically what do Japanese say about our customer service when we're not around? And then knowing that strategic information, think about what you can do to not fulfill some of these negative expectations they have and blow them away in a good way by, not being the stereotype, by setting yourself apart from everybody else. So that's kind of, any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I was thinking that it's really interesting how we usually, this is human nature, but we usually tend to to use stereotypes, for people and things and so on. And how this stereotyping is really broken, or can be broken, can be overcome. Just by being a little bit more observant and a little bit more willing, to connect with the people around you. And I think that, yes, as you said, Kikubari is exactly one of the ways to do that. So that, and I wonder, just, in a different, probably it's a different way to see it. Do you think that it has something in common with empathy? Because we have been talking about empathy so much now, recently. Empathy in business, empathy in, let's say everyday life and so on. But do you think that these are two similar concepts, or is it the same concept expressed in a different way? So
I don't know. I guess it's semantics now. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you define words. I see empathy as a key ingredient for it. You have to have empathy to not only be observant, but to want to do something about it, right? And I guess Kikubari includes doing something about it, like taking that action. Driven by empathy, maybe? I don't know. Maybe we're just splitting hairs with semantics.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I believe that probably everybody in the room has a different view on this. But yeah, I remember when, several years ago, there was a Shine Ryoko. So that was a company trip, to one of the hotels, actually the ryokans here in Japan, which had been rated the first in terms of service, the quality of services, they offer here in Japan among the Japanese ryokans. And so when we went there, it was so fascinating to experience, staying in that ryokan, because they were, when we entered the rooms, there was everything. They were set in such a way, and the amenities were there, and everything was prepared so that it looked like they had anticipated every single need and expectation of the customers. So, and it's another way, to just, of course, Japanese ryokans, they're very good at this, at Kikubari, and also being proactive at actually meeting your needs even before you know that you've got these needs, right? So it was so interesting for me to experience that. And also, as a person who was not born here, I thought that some of those things, we could go even without them. So, and I'll give you an example. So when we went into the ryokan, there was a yukata for not only just one yukata, but there were 2 yukatas for everybody who was staying there. And then they explained to us that one of the yukatas is, to be used after we get out of the ofuro. And then the second one was to change after we actually get our first yukata wet, because we still sweat after we get out of the ofuro. So when we sweat, the yukata gets wet, and then we need, to get another one, a dry one. And I thought, wow, how about this? So of course, it's so they had put a lot of thought into this, and they wanted to make us feel comfortable. And at the same time, I also remembered that I had a couple, a French couple coming to see me. And when they experienced a similar service, their immediate reaction was like, well, that's a little bit too much. Imagine, that you have a double number of yukatas which you have to wash. You use water, you use detergent, and it's not good for the environment. So we had these two, especially for me, actually, I could see these two different reactions, to all the thought the management of the ryokan had put into making us comfortable.
Yeah, Maya, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that'll let me plug a teaser for my next article, because as much as I rave about Japanese customer service, like its average level is very high, we all know who live here, it has weaknesses. And you touched on one, like sometimes they are offering you something you really don't want. No, thank you. I don't want instant coffee with lots of cream and sugar in it. I'd rather you ask me what I want, and I'll tell you, I ocha, please. That's how Westerners think. You give me choice. Kikubari should be about giving me choice, not necessarily anticipating something that maybe I really don't want. So there is a dark side. And that'll be my next article, the dark side of Japanese customer service, but it's actually the dark side of Kikubari. So that'll be my my follow-up article that I did.
That's interesting. I cannot wait to read it, because I think that there will be it will be presented in a positive light, of course, and I cannot wait to see some of your sense of humor integrated there too. So
well, yeah, I was going to say though, you were talking about the ryokan, and not a lot, but a few people, non-Japanese who have stayed there, said basically all the good things you said, but they said sometimes it's too much because they come and they put our phones out at a certain time and we don't want them out yet. In fact, you don't even have to do it. We'll do it ourselves when we're ready, and so some of that great service comes from being scripted, but that's also part of the weakness, because sometimes people don't want to paint outside the lines. People, it's safer to just follow the script. And the script allows you to have a high level, tight bell curve of service, but it's not always as flexible as you would, certainly as a Westerner, would want it to be. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Oh, yes, I do think it's a fair statement. And I also believe that without planning of all these services, for example, it is impossible for many facilities here to provide them. And so I think that we need to accept the fact that too much flexibility, sometimes is detrimental to comfort. And also too much planning is also detrimental to comfort. So we need to find, the balance between these two, so that customers actually feel comfortable, regardless of where they come from and regardless of what their cultural background is. Because as you said, here, when things are streamlined and when they're preset, and everybody knows what to expect. So this actually ensures that the service provider and the customer already know what to expect of each other. There are no surprises there. And it is, a great way to avoid risk and dissatisfaction. But at the same time, I think that once again here we go into the area of managing customer expectations. We need to be sure that our offer or service offer is adjusted somewhat to the expectations of, let's say, customers who come from other cultural background. But at the same time, I think that we need to also appreciate the fact that customers need to come prepared as well.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Please do, yes.
So one of the things that Tim mentioned in just opening up this conversation was when he was in Hawaii, and the reason why people reacted so well, especially from Japan, to the provision of whatever services there, was because it was so authentically provided that people love that. That's why I think ethnic restaurants are so great and they do so well here, is because there's an authenticity there that is even though the service here in Japan is really at a high level, there's a layer of artificiality to it. And the thing that is so great and so cool about Japan is that the people that are delivering the service, they understand that there's a certain set menu and there's very little variation in providing it, but it's part of their job. So what they do is they add the layer of authenticity at the human level by smiling, by talking with you, by saying things, even though that's part of the gig too. And if you can have the delivery by the service provider, adding a little bit of flavor there, it kind of covers up everything and makes it all kind of nice. And the reason why I'm mentioning this in this flavor is because it's April now, and April is the time of new employees. The new employees join the workforce, but it's also the time when the people who joined last year have finished their training, and then they come up and now they're doing maybe client-facing interactions. And so you see these new people, they're green, they're just having their first customer experience in April, and you can see the scheme, the schisms in the training and in their reality and in their expectations and in their performance, and you can see this roll out in real time, and it's so interesting to see because it's all a part of the training. It's all a part of this is how we do it here. This is what customer service means, and I think what people really want is they want that authenticity. Sometimes it's really hard to find because if you just look around the room, you can tell we don't want the goddamn futons out now, but everybody has to go to the corner of the room while you roll out the futons, and just a little bit of reading the air and seeing the situation and revising the game plan. Sometimes that just doesn't happen, and it's also pretty hilarious too.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I always like getting your perspective. Mai, did you have something to say?
Oh, no, I wanted to say that was, a great contribution. So, and I agree with that, yes, very much. And it's also one thought occurred to me while listening to Timothy talking about the newcomers, the brand new employees. Maybe it's easier to find authenticity in younger employees and service providers than in the experienced ones. I don't know. It's just, a thought which occurred to me while listening to you, Timothy.
The other thing that occurred to me was on our last Unplanned Japan podcast, we talked about the joys of being a Joden, right? A regular customer, repeat customer. And in those situations, that's the best customer service I've ever experienced anywhere, because in addition to being a customer, they know you now on a human level, and you start seeing more of their authentic self, and the service is off the charts. And, as I mentioned, it's almost counterintuitive. Sometimes they almost treat you worse because you're their friends now, and they have to prioritize the other customers over you because you guys know each other well, and that's in essence, it's a kind of a compliment if you think about it. And I think part of that is baked into that is the authenticity. You start really getting to know the authentic server. So whereas in the US, and again, I've had some awesome service in the US because if you get the right server, and the Japanese say it's atari hazure, right? You either get someone or you don't. It's hit or miss, right? But when you get a good server, man, they'll go out of their way. They're like really, really good, and their flexibility is their strength, So I don't mean to put down my countrymen, but we all know too that on the opposite end of the spectrum is horrible service. And in Japan, again, I always focus on the idea that the average level is very high, right? You go to the 7-Eleven or the Lawson's, and they hand you that bento box, like it's an encrusted, diamond watch or whatever. It's a higher level of average service that you see here. And again, it comes with its weaknesses, though, right?
Yes, it does. It does. So, but I think that once you get to live here for more than a couple of years, you eventually get used to it. And I have noticed, I remember one thing when I first came to Japan, and we lived in a very old apartment building. And so it was like there was no hot running water. So we needed to install one of those gas boilers, instant boilers. Maybe some people know that, what I mean, but it's like you install them, and when you get the water running, so the boiler instantly warms up the water. So that was for the kitchen. And of course, in the beginning, because we came to Japan in the summer, there was no need, to have running hot water in the kitchen. But when it started getting cold, and the water, of course, became much colder, so I said, well, we need a boiler here. So, and I thought that it would take maybe weeks until we get it installed. And what happened at that time was that the moment I said, well, I need a boiler because I cannot have my hands, freezing all the time when I, prepare something to eat. My husband just called the gas company, and that was Saturday morning. And then they came to our apartment a couple of hours later. They installed the boiler, and everything was done in just that half a day. And I couldn't believe it, because if it was back home in Bulgaria, it would take weeks. Of course, I expected that to be the same here. And so what I want to say is that I have become to expect this level of service, and response and so on, and it feels comfortable to me. I know what it includes, what to expect, and so I don't want to have any surprises in this sense of the word, because life is already busy enough. So for me, who have been here for 20 years, it's just, it's very comfortable. And I don't know whether other people feel in this way. And what I wanted to say, just to make it shorter, is that in the beginning, a lot of things are surprising. They surprise you in a good or a bad way. But at the end of the day, when you get used to how things are, you become comfortable and get to appreciate them more than people who come here or who have lived here just for a short time.
For sure. And the downside is it spoils you for life. You get so used to this level. And I lived in Hawaii. Hawaii is like, surf's up, dude. I can't make it today. They won't even tell you. They just won't show up. And then when you call them back, they go, oh, no, the surf was up, man. Like, you're supposed to just accept that as a reasonable excuse. So I got used to that, or not used to it. It was maddening. And I was never able to shake the level of Japanese service. So I was almost always disappointed. Not always, though.
Well, that's not the only thing, too. I mean, the other kind of interesting part about it is that you begin to embody it, too. You begin to do those things that are done to you, and you begin to kind of mimic and follow those things, too. So, like
Yes.
Maya said, after a couple of years here, you somewhat take it for granted, but you begin to emulate, and it becomes a part of your performance as well. And then when you go back for Christmas or to go visit the family, you've forgotten that you've absorbed all of these things. You're acting different. Your mannerisms are different. Your perspective is different. And people look at you like, that's really weird of you. I can pour my own goddamn wine. Or, why do you do it like that? And that sort of thing. It's just such a whole body experience coming to Japan and kind of attempting to assimilate it. Just really affects you in so many different ways.
Oh, man, I love that observation. It's so true. And I know Maya knows it, and everybody who lives in Japan, who in this room, knows exactly what you're talking about. You incorporate it into your own behavior, and not even consciously. You just kind of absorb it by osmosis. And as you said, you don't really notice it because it's slow. And then you go back and you visit your family, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're so much different than me, which means I've changed. So, yeah, that's a really, really good point.
Yes, it is. Thank you for making it, Timothy. It's a great point. And again, I encourage everybody who is listening to join us. If you're not in a position or in an environment where you can talk, you can share your comments in the room chat, as some people have done already. But please do come up on stage and talk with us if you get even just a few minutes to do that. So we've got a question here. Do you think Kikubari is a direct result of the group over individual mentality of Japanese people?
It's definitely an important dimension, of course, the group, right? Rather than
Yes.
thinking. So, I always give the comparison. When Americans order beer, first of all, the beer is sized in individually sized packages because we want choice, individual choice. So we all get our own beer, and this is my beer, and we focus on our own beer. And in Japan, the group is focused on a larger bottle, and it's shared, and you can't pour your own glass of beer. You have to worry about everybody else first and prioritize them. And of course, if everybody thinks that way, then you're always pouring each other's beer, right? So that's the group. That's the collectivist mentality. And, when Mac did his series on making sake, it resonated because that's the roots. The roots is rice culture. You have to work together as a team. It's labor intensive. It's not necessarily efficient, but with effort, you can get the highest yields possible. And that's really where Japanese culture is embedded in. And you see it in the modern day workplace that and even in the beer pouring ritual. So, yeah, I think that's a really good observation. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Rando, yes, for asking the question. And one more thing which just came up to me while listening to you, Tim, is like nowadays, because I'm so used to all these things, it's very difficult for me to, for example, as a woman, okay, I come from a Western background, cultural background, so I come from a place where women are not supposed to pour drinks not to anybody, not to themselves, right? But here in Japan, it's the other way around. So when I have a nomikai, that's the drinking party with colleagues after work, and when I'm with Japanese colleagues only, it's very easy for me to, I know what my what is expected of me, and of course, by pouring drinks to everybody there, I know that it makes both of us, both sides actually, feel comfortable, because we know what our roles are, and if we fulfill them, so it's it actually helps build trust and maintain that trust. The problem for me comes when I'm in a mixed company with foreigners and Westerners who have lived in Japan. I mean Westerners who have lived in Japan for a while, because that's where you really don't know how to thread the waters. And as Timothy said, a lot of us foreigners who have been here for a while, we pick up those mannerisms, and also we also adjust to the local culture. And so it's really difficult to know how to act properly in mixed environments. And when I say mixed environments, again, I mean when I'm in the company of both Japanese and foreigners.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I had not thought of you, Maya, being from Bulgaria, where you're not supposed to pour a drink for anybody, even for yourself, and then coming here, and it's all upside down. And I hadn't thought about that, because we've never had that kind of conversation. You know, I'm constantly struck when I watch TV of these Ukrainians that are coming into Japan, and it's not so much by choice. For you, it was by choice. For me, it was by choice. For Tim, it was by choice. So you deal with these challenges because it's a part of the decision that you made. But for people like that are coming in and they're learning for the first time, maybe they heard stories, but do you really take your shoes off when you go into a Japanese house? Oh my God, things like that. I'm constantly thrust back to that time when I first came to Japan and was confronted by all of these new things, and how daunting it was, and how challenging it was every single day, just going through normal life and wondering what mistakes I'm going to make today, for these people who are coming into Japan, and maybe for other people too, for business reasons, or their company is sending them here. It is really we talk about it all the time, can't lose sight of the fact that it's so upside down, it's so difficult to really find your groove here, find where your comfort zone is, and accepting the fact that you're not Japanese and you won't be Japanese and nobody's going to accept you as Japanese, but there is that little zone where you can operate, and coming to terms with that and finding that is a challenge of a lifetime, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes, very much so. Tim, you were going to say something, I believe.
No, I was going to invite, is it Aid K or Adek on stage? Thank you for coming up and tap dancing with us. For those of you who came late, we had no speaker for today, so I was the second banana to fill in, which is appropriate.
You're a big banana, Tim.
I'm the second banana, but so I'm just tap dancing. So I appreciate people coming up on stage and tap dancing
Frank,
with us.
you scared Frank up too.
Frank, I know. Frank, I can't wait to have a drink with you, buddy. So again, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Please introduce yourself, sir, with the banana.
Hello, my friend is audience, Rafał.
Hello, we can hear you. Okay, I guess that it's a little bit difficult to maybe the connection is not so good. So, yes, Frank, can you talk now?
Hi. Yep. Morning,
Great.
everyone. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You have been
Great to
here
talk to you all
for
again.
quite a while too, so thank you for joining.
No, it's actually when I saw the topic for today, the first thing that came to my mind is whatever you don't learn in books, you're going to learn that from people, basically. And it got me thinking. Over the years, I've been asked many times to give advice to exchange students before they come here. How do you settle down in Japan? What's the best way to go about it? And so I'd always, I'm a huge fan of homestays. My own homestay that I only stayed with for 3 months 40 years ago are still my closest friends here. We were just over there with them last week again. But get engaged, get to know people, and I'd also like get involved in sports and whatever your interests are, and make Japanese friends was the basic message. This came up. I'm doing this some research on Japan country management, so talking to to country managers with a similar background to my own, who've been here for a long time and are very, very engaged in Japan, and asking them about, what they think about Japan and the cultural aspects of doing their jobs. And one thing that came up time and time again with a lot of the people I've spoken to is one person came up with the phrase of two in a box. When you're running a company here, what you really want is a foreigner who understands Japan to a point, but also has got the foreign perspective. But you also need a Japanese colleague, almost at the same level, or maybe one of them is slightly above the other one. But that the lesson that you don't read in textbooks, and it's not something I don't think that many companies who are looking at Japan look for, is that the best results come from a partnership of us sort of Japan insider foreigners and Japanese colleagues. You don't see this written down a lot. It's something you learn in your personal life. I think it's something you learn in your professional life when you're here for a long time. It's so simple, it's hardly worth mentioning, but at the same time, it's not something I hear people talking a lot about.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Frank. It's always nice to have people with one foot in each culture, and it probably makes for those partnerships, the effectiveness of those partnerships, because you kind of get a feel through those relationships what your strengths and weaknesses are and what the other person's is, and I think you're better at navigating, trying to tap into the strengths of each side. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah, and I think you can never learn everything. So getting together with people who'll fill the gaps that you don't know, I think it's just very important. My homestay family, friends, business colleagues, Japanese business colleagues, are the reason that I've been able to live in Japan. My wife, my family, obviously. But I think that's a very important aspect. Just that being engaged, having friends, having Japanese friends, working with great Japanese people.
Yes, I agree with you on that. And as you said, if you have a business partner or a colleague, you as a foreigner, and you have a Japanese business partner or a colleague to actually help, and not only help, but to fill the gaps which you cannot fill. And well, that's actually a two-way street. So that's, I think that's the best way to be here and to do business here, because of course there is always something which we cannot do perfectly as foreigners, and of course on the other side there is something which the local business people cannot do as local coming from the local culture anyway. So it's really a win-win situation. And I believe that people who have your or people with your background, Frank, or people who have lived here for at least, let's say, 5, 6, or 7 years, they have realized the benefits of having partners in the company, Japanese partners in the company. And of course, engaging, because engaging is the only way to get to know the others and to, well, actually improve what you already know, or, your knowledge, your expertise, and so on.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I was just thinking about it. It's almost immeasurable how much I've learned from Japanese people, because I'm learning every day, even just my wife. It might be a linguistic thing about the Japanese language. It could be something about the culture, but it's nice to have, a native that you're really close to, that you can share, ideas with and ask questions openly. And as Frank said, making friends is really what it's all about. That was my motivation for learning to speak Japanese. If I didn't have friendships, I'm not sure I would have stuck to it and learned it, well enough to be fluent and build relationships. So making those friendships, and it might be a subject beyond today's scope, and it might be something we can talk about in the future. We know, I was talking to Anthony. What's Anthony's last name again? Anthony
Griffin.
Anthony Griffin. And we were just talking about, like, some of us never had a problem making friends here. And some people talk about that a lot, how difficult it is to make friends. So we're clearly having different experiences. And I'm really curious. Obviously, some of it has to do with personality, but I'm very curious about, like, what sets people apart. Some people would just feel like it wasn't that hard, and it could just be luck, falling into the right situation. But that's another topic that just kind of interests me since you brought it up, Frank.
Yes, I wonder, Frank, what's your take on this? If you can speak now.
Yeah, no, that's all It's very true. I mean, I honestly think I would not be in Japan today. I've been in Japan for over 30 years now, and I probably wouldn't have lasted longer than my time as an exchange student if I didn't have the homestay, if I didn't make friends. And I know, looking back at my professional career, when things have gone well, it's been because I've had this great partnership with a Japanese colleague or a Japanese, business partner. And when things have gone bad, it's when that's broken down. So I think it's just fundamental to, living, enjoying, and surviving in Japan.
I wonder whether Timothy can add something to this. Timothy, can you talk now?
Yeah, friends. Yeah, when I first got here, I was so strange, and I was in such an isolated place in Akita, so very few foreigners who were there. It was really difficult to make friends because I was just a curiosity, and so people just wanted to, it was just very a different kind of basis for establishing a relationship. So, like Frank said, I joined a team, a rugby team, the city rugby team. And boy, things really started to change after that. I mean, people started coming out of the woodwork. We had something to talk about. They wanted to see how I reacted to eating all sorts of disgusting things and drinking, in a fashion that didn't really accommodate my temperament. And yeah, it was just like being an experiment that people like to play with, and it was really fun, and I learned a lot. But like Frank said, it's the friends that kind of get you over the hump, because it's tough when you're here by yourself and you're trying to master things, you're trying to learn things, you're trying to diminish the number of mistakes that you make on a daily basis to finally get to that point. And I know for everybody that's here on the room, the first year is really the toughest, because it's like it's not written in a book how not to make these mistakes. The stuff that's written in books that you prepare for, that you read, that people tell you about, they're somewhat obvious, or they become obvious quickly. But the stuff that's not written in the book, you have to learn by yourself. You have to learn by either making the mistake or observing and seeing it done, and then mimicking it and maybe not doing it the right way. Like bowing. There are 30 different ways to bow, and you don't know that when you come here. So you figure out how to bow, and then you do that to the girl that's wiping the handrail on the escalator, and you do that to the boss that just hired you, and it just never ends, does it? So once you get past that first year and a half, 2 years, with the help of friends who will pull you aside and say, hey, you're supposed to do it this way, not that way, and I've been observing you, and don't stick your chopsticks into the rice like that, yeah, just lots of things like that. They're just not written in books. You have to pick them up, and most of the time, even friends, people that won't go out of their way to say it, because maybe it's embarrassing to you or embarrassing to them, or they figure it's not their place. But it does lengthen the time that you have to devote to kind of picking up some of these skills. But it's if you don't enjoy it, you'll just go crazy, and you'll go back home, and you'll go pick up a different career. But this one here is, you get used to it, and then you go back home, and everything back home is so easy. You long for the challenges that are coming at you, like Tim said, on an everyday basis. You learn something. It's true what you said, Tim. Every single day you can pick something up here. You can learn something. You can observe something that is a new insight for you. So it's, wow, what a great country. What a great place to live.
Yeah, and I think that something else you raised is, like, you got to have somebody you really trust that will give you the truth, because as you said, sometimes the Japanese cut you too much slack, and then you don't learn from it, and you repeat the same mistake because they were being too polite and they just didn't want to tell you. But listening to you, Timothy, I believe that, I don't know how old you were when you got here, but you were much more self-aware than I was. I was the opposite. I was a young, clueless, oblivious idiot, like a happy idiot.
Well, you're describing me now, though.
Well, I was cluelessly imposing my values. I didn't even know what a value was. I learned that by coming to Japan. Like, the idea of a value, a cultural value, had never occurred to me, right? And yet I'm imposing my values onto them without even knowing it. So what's the joke? One fish says to the other fish, "How's the water?" And the other fish says, "What the hell is water?" Well, that's kind of what your own culture is. You're swimming in your own values and assumptions, and you're not conscious of them. And so, of course, in my case, I was projecting it onto the Japanese. And then I go to college, and I accidentally take this course on American cross-cultural. It was a cross-cultural course, but it was on American culture. I almost dropped it, but the professor said, nope, if you want to understand Japanese culture, you have to understand your own culture first. So I took the course, and it blew my mind, because I realized for the previous 4 years in Japan, I had been breaking all the rules, and I didn't even know it. So that was my problem. I was just kind of a happy idiot. Had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, that's a great thing you said, Tim, that we usually, when we go into another country and we start interacting with that country, unconsciously we project our own values and we put our own, let's say, labels on what we see. And most of the time, it's really different from what we see on the surface, and there is different logic in in why people do this or that, and the reasons for all these things are different from what we are used to. And of course, I think it's normal, because when you don't have that shared heritage or shared experience, it happens. Of course, it happens, between different families. It happens between different regions in one countries, and so on. But still, a lot of people are not aware enough of this tendency. So, yeah, we need to really understand that how we see things is probably not the way things are. And especially in cultures like Japan, which is quite different from Western cultures, right? And I believe that a lot of other Asian cultures, of course, are quite different from Western cultures as well. But anyway, we need to be aware of this and be more open to accepting that things may not be as we see them.
And and knowing ourselves, I think that helps a lot if we know ourselves, because that's the starting point, which is what that professor told me. He said, if you know who you are and know what your own values are, then no matter what culture you go to, whether it's Japan or Germany or anywhere, you're going to be aware of what yours are, and it'll be easier to figure things out and adapt to wherever you're at, which is really good advice.
Yeah, I think it is a very good advice. And one thing which happened to me after coming to Japan was that I actually got to understand myself better. And well, I didn't have the opportunity to go to any courses, so it took me quite a while, to learn about myself too. But anyway, so that's, I believe, one of the things which living in a different country helps you do is understand yourself better. Of course, if there is a way to get to learn that faster in a shorter time, that's the best thing. But even if not, then of course just dive into the new place and engage with people, as Frank said, and learn about them, learn about yourself too. Because at the end of the day, we can learn about ourselves by comparing different things, what we see, what we have experienced, and so on. And I know that a lot of people who are much into wellness, they usually say, don't compare yourself to others. So I don't mean comparing yourself to others in this way, like they did better than I did. It's just understanding the differences between what you know and what you're learning at the moment.
Yes, and I think it also requires people to learn how to hold opposing points of view in their heads at the same time without judgment, and being able to say, this is what this person's thinking, this is what they value, these are their assumptions, and here's what the other person is. And I think that can benefit you in the long run to have that. I think it's a skill that I learned living here, and living with Japanese people for 44 years. I had a roommate in college, Japanese guy, and then the rest of the time it's been my wife, right? So that's where I learned it. Having to live with a partner in Maya, I think everybody here is in really the same situation as I am in that sense.
Another kind of interesting thing you're talking about, learning about yourself and understanding, what your boundaries are and why you make decisions. The other thing that also confronts you as you're trying to learn your verb tenses and expand your vocabulary and learning all these things about just being here and living here is that you're also expected to be an ambassador for your country and your culture, because people will ask you all the time, do Americans always have guns? Do you have a horse at your house, right? You come from Georgia, so are there cowboys in Georgia and stuff like that? And sometimes you've never thought of that. You've never even kind of conceived of these questions that you're asked, and you get asked 2 or 3 times in a span of time, and pretty soon you figure out, I guess I better figure out what the answer is to that, because people are really curious and they think, what their impression is of my country. And so not only do you have to work on one side, but you also have to work on the other side of actually learning about your country and your culture. And in the process, you learn also about yourself, about why you make decisions, why you have these prejudices, why, you have been indoctrinated in a certain way, and understanding that it's been indoctrination, so that you can begin to open your mind a little bit more to other ways of thinking and doing things. But that's a process. It just takes a lot of time. But I think, one of the things that I learned a lot about in my first 2 years here in Japan was I learned a lot about my own country.
Yeah, and I was guilty of bringing stereotypes with me to Japan. I was pretty clueless, and a lot of the stereotypes are created in subliminal ways by the media. So, for example, and this is going to sound naive, but again, I was 19, right? And I come here, I'm thinking, the Japanese are this humorless race of people that all march to work in step, every day, and I remember going out and drinking with Japanese and seeing them laugh and being able to share a laugh over some silly joke that somehow spanned the culture gap, and just being amazed at, like, oh my gosh, they're just like us. They like our music. They were all listening to rock and roll. I mean, it was a silly thing, but to me, it was a revelation. You know what I mean? It shows how scary the media is and how they kind of indoctrinate us at this subliminal level into these silly, two-dimensional stereotypes we assign to people.
Yeah, I remember also a similar. Well, it's not exactly about my stereotype of the Japanese as a nation, but I remember thinking before coming to Japan that, oh my God, they probably know. I mean, because all the people are so businesslike there. Oh, it's stereotyping. Sorry. Okay, all the people are businesslike there, and they actually care much more about work than anything else, and they probably don't have any flower shops. So what am I going to do? And I love flowers, plants. I love succulents, and so on and so on. And I was like, what am I going to do? Probably I'll have to take some plants with me from Bulgaria to Japan. Of course, it was not possible. But there was, of course, at that point, there was very little information about Japan as a country overseas. And of course, nobody was talking about how good actually the Japanese companies here, like Sumitomo, or I don't remember others. There are a couple of companies here that work actually on selection of plants, and they constantly create new plants, new varieties, beautiful ones. But there was no information about that. And so I was thinking, yeah, probably I'm going to be quite, bored because there are no flower shops there where I can shop and create my own, teapot garden or whatever. And when I came here, I was just, blown by the variety of flowers and cut flowers and potted flowers and everything that was available everywhere. So, yeah, it's really interesting to observe also and to think how the media shape our perceptions of different countries, different regions, and different people.
Yeah, one thing, Timothy, you mentioned, some of the questions Japanese people would ask you that you just had no idea you didn't see that one coming, right? So back when I was in college as arubaito, I worked at a juku teaching eikaiwa to Japanese kids. They were like, third graders, fourth graders. So I'm playing games with them and stuff. And they would ask me the funniest questions, because they're kids. So they're very innocent, right? And two of them that just jumped out at me was one, this little girl says to me, America ni wa McDonald's arimasu ka? Do they have McDonald's in America? Which made me laugh. She had no idea that was an American company at the time. And the other was, America ni wa necktie arimasu ka? Right? Do we have neckties? So I didn't see these coming. They were thinking this was part of their culture at the time, which I thought was kind of cute.
Yes, indeed. It sounds cute nowadays too. Well, great. So it's 9:00. Tim, and then Frank and Timothy. Anything to say before I wrap up the room?
I hope my tap dance wasn't too bad, and thank you for coming on stage and tap dancing with me, Timothy and Frank and Maya.
Thank you very much. Thanks for hosting this room, Maya, as always. And also, Tim, I enjoyed your story that appeared on LinkedIn yesterday about the bank robbery and how much of it was your fault. So please keep writing and posting, because you're a terrific writer, and I always enjoy your perspective and your experience. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And same sentiment from me, Tim, and thank you, Maya, as well. And Tim, I'm looking forward to that beer.
Right on. You got to come out. You guys all got to come out to Atami, so do it soon.
Well, this has been noted, the invitation, accepted with gratitude too. And so it's the time when we usually close the room, and we say thank you to everybody who stayed with us for 60 minutes today. We appreciate your being here. We appreciate your comments in the room chat, your questions and observations as well. Of course, we have this room every Thursday morning. So the moderators of the room are Tim Sullivan, or Atami Tim, as you can see him here, and me. And we invite guests today. We had, of course, unplanned guests, Frank Foley and Timothy Langley. Frank and Timothy, thank you for coming up on stage. Thank you for sharing your perspectives, and thank you for telling us what was unexpected when you came here to Japan, and well, the life lessons you learned while here. So with this, I wish everybody a great day. If you thought that this room was interesting, please tell your friends that the recording will be here on Clubhouse for quite a while. And also the recording will be available in about a week on YouTube, so that if somebody's curious, they can go there and listen to it. Well, have a great day, everybody, and we're looking forward to seeing you next Thursday. But before that, of course, we've got the Sunday morning room with Timothy Langley about Japanese politics. And if you think that the Japanese politics is boring, well, I'm sorry for that. You should definitely come to the Sunday morning room and listen to what Timothy has to tell us, so that you can get to know the bigger picture here and the things and events that are important to your business in Japan and your life in Japan too. So see you then. Have a great day.
Thank you for coming and staying with us today. We will be on air next week on Thursday at 8 a.m. Japan time again, so join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, you can follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Again, we're looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you.